UFOs? Or maybe they're the leaders of the New World Order or the global snoops. What dangers lurk ahead for mankind? Conspiracies and national cover-ups. Movies and books have made them famous. Well, we've got the authors and the experts that can dispel the myths and reveal which conspiracies will change the way we live during the next millennium. Are they out to get us? It's Conspiracy-2000 and beyond right now on The Full Nelson. I'm Rob Nelson, and Happy New Year. Welcome to a special edition of The Full Nelson and the New Millennium. All right, well, we're still here. Now, many doomsday conspiracy theorists didn't think we'd make it this far, and some still believe we won't make it very far after 2000. Whether it's threats from the New World Order or alien invasion, some people believe the world just is not safe, even if we escape the Y2K virus. Look, conspiracists have poked holes in decades of events and government explanations, and they continue to question the cover-ups and mysteries of our time. Here via satellite to talk about this with me in LA is Jonathan Vankin. He's a journalist and the author of several conspiracy books, including the 70 Greatest Conspiracies of All Time. And here in our New York studios with me is Kenn Thomas, editor and publisher of Steam Shovel Press, a quarterly magazine that examines conspiracy topics. David Benahum, a contributing editor for Wired magazine. John Elliston, a journalist who studies declassified government documents and then posts them and writes about them on his website Dossier on Periscope.com. And Robert Sterling, who's the editor of Conformist.com. All right, thank you guys for all being here, and Jonathan, you in LA. Well, we made it to 2000, and a whole lot of people thought we wouldn't, right? I mean, everyone prophesied that the end was coming, the end was coming. People have been prophesying this for years, for decades. What's up with that? I mean, it didn't happen. We made it. You surprised? You're all silent. None of you are surprised?
No, not at all. Actually, the first thing that comes to mind...
Aren't you the paranoid guys? Aren't you the ones that were supposed to expect the worst?
I've always been very relaxed about it. I mean, my feeling, what comes to mind when I hear you say this is the work of another conspiracy theorist, a woman named Acharya S., who has written this book called The Christ Conspiracy, in which she makes the case that there's not a single shred of proof that Jesus Christ was historically real. So the idea that the year 2000, which is 2,000 years from the birth of somebody who's not real, signifies anything special is, you know, silly. And so I thought...
Why then do we make such a big deal out of 2000? Why was 2000 such a big, important event for us in terms of what was going to happen to the world? I mean, people talked about a government takeover, you know, that this would be the ideal time for the government to take over and shut us down.
Well, you know, to me it was not really too much of an issue, because the idea that the government was going to take over seemed ludicrous because, you know, they already had taken over. You know, and furthermore, I was never too worried about it because, to me, the whole idea, I don't know, I've always felt that our society has many faults, our government has many faults, but a lack of resiliency certainly wasn't one of them, so I'm not surprised at all.
No surprises. Jonathan, out there in LA, what do you think? You studied conspiracies for a long time, and you actually kind of went undercover, didn't you? Sort of, is that the right way to put it? I mean, I understand you kind of became a conspiracy freak to write a book.
In my first book, I kind of, I don't know if I'd say I became a freak exactly, but...
Well, that was my word, not yours. I don't want to say that you describe yourself that way. But it sounds like you went a little into the world in a deep way.
Right, the idea was to just, you know, I'd never really been into these things that much before, was to just sort of open my mind to them and to try to put myself in that same mindset. And, you know, you find when you start reading a lot of the things that the so-called conspiracy theorists are also reading or have written themselves, that it's really not that hard to put yourself in the mindset, because there often is a pretty solid foundation of factual information underlying a lot of conspiracy theories. It's often, you know, the conclusions and the connections that are made, which sometimes don't make sense and sometimes do make sense. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't too hard to get myself into that frame of mind.
But before you did
a lot harder to get yourself out of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask. But before you went in, did you view it kind of with skepticism, like, oh, these people come up with these wacky ideas and they think, you know, the world's coming to an end and the government's shutting everything down and in control? I
mean, for me, it wasn't that. It wasn't like I was thinking, oh, these people are all so crazy. I was more wondering why the rest of us in society and the media and academia think they're so crazy. I mean, why is it that if you have an idea that is essentially, you know, a dissenting opinion, an idea that is, you know, discredits our government or you know, implies some sort of terrible motives to people who are not supposed to think bad things about. Why is it that if you think that, you're a pariah? I mean, why are certain ideas not acceptable? And that was really what I was more interested in. I've always been open to all sorts of ideas. It's more, you know,
Rob, you're nodding your head as he's talking, especially when he says the idea that why are you so discredited for thinking there's something hidden?
Well, yeah, I mean, to begin with, let me kiss John's ass a little bit. He's one of the main reasons I got into the subject, reading his book, and that whole philosophy of, you know, why is it that certain ideas, if you believe them, that not only are you wrong, perhaps, but they're dangerous and evil, and that someone has to be discredited. That really got me thinking and made me realize, you know, there's something to this.
Okay, well, you know what? We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to kind of jump in right into the, like, deep conspiracy stuff. Roswell, Area 51, crop circles, Men in Black. And this whole question, is there something out there we made contact or we just crave?
1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
I'm Rob Nelson. Welcome back to our special Millennium Edition of the Full Nelson. Are they out to get us? Okay, crop circles, UFO sightings, animal mutations. Is this stuff proof of extraterrestrials, John? Is there evidence out there?
It's none that I've come across. It's not my area that I care about a lot, but it opens up a lot of investigations of areas that I think are real concrete and real related to the substance of people's lives. A lot of conspiracy theory, as it's marketed on Fox and other networks, comes out truly in a mass market infotainment mold. But some of these topics are very genuine concerns about power and about who makes the decisions about people's lives. And so the ET matters and the crop circle matters are an important issue in some people's lives. But I think other conspiracy theories are far more relevant.
More relevant, maybe, but before we get to some of those, which we will, at the same time, when they do polls, they find that basically most people think the government's hiding something from us about space. And, you know, what did happen in Roswell? Something crashed into the ground and made a big hole, right? What was it? What was it?
I have no idea what may or may not have crashed in Roswell, whether or not there actually is a hole. I mean, this is all storytelling as far as I'm concerned. I've seen no evidence about this, and as we know, we can fictionalize evidence as much as you want. But I think the basic question is, why is it that when it comes to space, people feel that the government is hiding something? The answer is, well, for years, the government did hide stuff from us when it came to space, and perhaps they still do, simply because space is where all our intelligence is gathered. That's where all the spy satellites fly.
So it's like the logical place to think that
there's an awful lot of stuff in space that we don't know about. And so if you start with that kernel of truth, you can build out of there something as the...
Is there any, and Jonathan, and jump in on the satellite if you think you have an answer for this, is there any basis for much of the sort of more extreme space stuff? We didn't walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong was in Vegas in a, you know, in a fancy hotel with hookers. I mean, all that stuff, you know, how do you know what to believe? I mean, I think it's got to be crazy that we didn't go to the moon, that we did, you know.
I don't think there's necessarily a basis for that, but I mean, you can sort of see the logic behind it because, I mean, here's something, how do we know that these people were on the moon other than that we were being told that they were on the moon when they were there? Now, obviously, I think that they were there, and I think most people would agree, but, you know, again, it's just this sort of gap between what we receive through the media and what we're actually, what we can actually perceive with our own senses that causes people to fill in the gap and come up with these theories.
The basic problem with all these so-called conspiracy theories is, take the moon example, for instance, the amount of energy required to keep that project secret, the fact that we filmed this in a television studio in Nevada or something, is so unlikely. Just you can do the math on the number of people that would have to keep it secret, not tell their wives, never tell your child. It's just absurd. And this is the basic reason why so many conspiracy theories fall apart. It's related to the number of people that have to keep silent. And you just do the math. The bigger the circle gets, the more likely it's phony.
And the hard fact that people in our government haven't been very good at keeping secrets in so many cases, even smaller secrets than hiding a moon landing.
Somebody talks, sooner or later.
That's really what they want you to think. I've actually written an entire book on this subject called NASA, Nazis, and JFK, in which I discuss the part of this moon landing stuff. If you watch the footage of the lunar module leaving the surface of the moon, there's no rocket blast, and there's not a blast crater. There are real questions like that. I mean, if you put aside things like
But you're getting at that issue. That's what you're saying.
There's a photograph of JFK and Werner von Braun, who's a chief rocket scientist in developing our space program, in which, in von Braun's own memoirs, he says after the photograph was taken, there was an argument.
Right.
An argument broke out. And of course, von Braun, who was a Nazi, who was part of the paperclip Nazi thing, was arguing for rockets. What was JFK
but Ken, you're saying you think that it didn't happen. Hmm? You're saying you think we didn't go to the moon.
No, I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. I'm saying that it was a space project like all these space projects that have a lot of things attached to them, and of course they have secrets. Of course advanced technology is being kept secret.
But do you think we went to the moon? Hmm?
Well, I'm certain we went to the moon, but I don't think we used rockets to take off from... you can see the photographs are there for anybody to see.
Why would they?
That's a whole other strain of the space thing, is that, yeah, we did go, and this to me is maybe a little more plausible.
You know what, Jonathan, I got to stop you. We got to take a break. I'm sorry. I'll get you on the other side. Stay with us.
AIDS, the Ebola virus, on an evolutionary scale, they are newborns. This virus walked the planet long before the dinosaurs.
What do you mean, walked?
Your aliens, Agent Mulder, your little green men, arrived here millions of years ago.
Welcome back to the Millennium Edition of The Full Nelson. I'm Rob Nelson. And that was the TV show, The X-Files. That show and the movie, I think, in many ways, really helped legitimize the idea of government conspiracy, certainly in the sense of covering up with aliens. I mean, at a large level, people now think that's possible.
Well, and it's partly true that the government is copped to some of the lies about space programs over the years. You brought up Roswell in that case. Right now, if you read Air Force historical reports on Roswell, they will tell you that the government lied, that there was a cover-up of sorts at Roswell, that some high-tech listening devices that came down in the desert were hidden from the public. A cover story was cooked up about weather balloons. And 40, 50 years later, it's no surprise that we've generated numerous stories and speculations about what might have happened there.
But so in your mind, you read a lot of declassified documents and dig through this stuff. You think that's probably what happened. Not that an alien ship crashed in the desert, but the government dropped something they didn't want anyone to know about.
In so many cases, I think, excessive government secrecy arises from national security concerns. And in the course of the Cold War, we had national security concerns that were hysterical, unreasonable, and that limited our access to information and our government's ability to tell us the truth. Mm-hmm. And Roswell is a small and, in some sense, not so important instance of that, because my life went on the same whether or not something landed in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, I cut you off at the break for that commercial. What do you think about the space stuff, the landing on the moon, that there weren't prints and no blast when the lunar module took off?
Yeah, I think what I was saying before, I think what Ken had been trying to say is that perhaps, there's a much more plausible space conspiracy theory. Would be not so much that we just didn't go to the moon at all, but that, maybe there were technologies, specifically military technologies, that may have been used in that mission or in the other moon missions or in any space mission that are not being revealed to the public, weren't revealed then, and aren't being revealed now. And I think that's not only plausible. I mean, in some cases, like with the space shuttle, it's true. I mean, a lot of times the space shuttle goes up and they say it's a classified mission. Who knows what they're doing up there? So I think it is certainly, it's something worth thinking about, that maybe there are technologies that are a little more advanced than we're publicly told about, and I think that's what Ken was alluding to.
So the question is, were they back engineered from the spacecraft that crashed at Roswell?
But you really think something crashed at Roswell?
No, but I will tell you this. There's a group called MJ-12. This is a secret government group
this big
that deals with the
group,
aliens.
Yeah.
There is a smoking gun document that proves its existence. There's a document right now in the National Archives, and they will tell you it's there. They might suggest it's a hoax, but they don't get rid of it. It's called the Cutler-Twining Memo. Now, there's another author, a guy named Jim Martin, who is doing a book called Wilhelm Reich and the Cold War, in which he uncovers another document, not out yet, should be out in a week or so, in which he finds another document whose dates match up perfectly with this MJ-12 document. It's a smoking gun. The group exists, and you will know about this if you read this book, Wilhelm Reich and Nicole.
And they're covering something up? Aliens.
Well,
I'll go out to the audience real quick. Do you believe in aliens? Do you think they're out there? Do you think something crashed from space?
I don't know about that, but I think that there has to be some other life form other than us somewhere in the universe.
So you buy it. What do you think?
I totally disagree. I
No.
don't think there's anything else out there.
And the whole notion that we didn't land on the moon is just people being wacky, looking for
I think
something.
we landed on the moon. I don't think there's aliens.
Do you think the government would hide something from us?
Yes, I do.
You wouldn't be surprised?
No.
Would they hide that we went to the moon? Would they hide that there's like little funny ET bodies down there?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
What do you think?
You don't really want my opinion.
Yeah? Yeah? I
think there's
I wouldn't ask
something,
if I didn't want it.
okay, there's something, but who knows what it is?
What it is? You know what I'm trying to get at? Go ahead, Rob.
Well, let me just say, whether or not aliens exist or not, one thing that is pretty damn clear is that MJ-12 did exist.
MJ-12, for people who don't know, is this special group of 12 people who were kind of got together and supposedly cover everything
after the Roswell crash.
After Roswell.
Truman put them together.
Cover up space stuff.
The question isn't if they existed, but what exactly they were doing. And it's very much as plausible that much of what we talk about the alien phenomenon is disinformation and partially created and promoted by this group. That you know, there's two ways of looking at the MJ-12 story. One is that they created this whole hoax story to cover up a lot of high-tech things. There's a great Samizdat document titled The Controllers by Martin Cannon, and the author Alex Constantine has written some great books about this whole subject. The other possibility is that there actually was aliens and that we did back engineer this information from them, and that the cover-up is to hide the truth.
I just find, I mean, I hear you saying there's something else. I just find it so hard to believe that there's these people crashed, they're underground, and everybody's kept it a secret for this long.
Harder to believe for me is that our government could hide it from us. I've always believed the federal government is far too powerful and far too secretive. But their ability to hide things of this magnitude, I think, is
What about,
highly
let's go to the big, go ahead.
The U-2 was a secret, the Aurora was a secret.
The U-2 was a secret that blew.
Why would the government, why would
was a spy connected to the U-2
why would the
project?
government
We know
want
this
to
stuff.
hide this from us? Why would they want to hide that there's aliens?
Well, the answer is in actually their own reports. I forget the name of the report, but there is one where they basically said if there was a study done and they concluded that if people found out that there was another civilization outside of our planet, that would devastate our country. Actually the entire planet. And if you look at history, whenever some culture finds another culture, that's what happens. And it recommended in this report that it be covered up. And even in the film 2001, made by the genius Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke, what is the whole basic premise of the story? Well, that they find this outside alien kind of discovery. And what do they naturally do right away? They cover it up and they hide it. I mean, it's pretty logical that that would be the case, because whenever you see something new and it totally crashes all the conventional wisdom, it has to be controlled.
Jonathan, you know, this is what makes me think people are kooks when they talk. I'm sorry, but it's just like, you know,
Robert Sterling is definitely a kook.
No, you know what I'm saying? This is why you end up thinking people are crazy, because it's like, you know, come on. Aliens crashed.
Yeah.
They look like E.T. They always look like E.T. They're always blurry pictures. They're never clear pictures. You know, Men in Black, they always show up. Guys in suits afterward. I mean, it's a joke.
Well, I didn't say for a fact that they did exist. What I did say that if they did, that they would certainly cover it up. In fact, they've admitted to it. You can't deny to me that this document does exist. And are you going to argue with the logic of Stanley Kubrick or Arthur C. Clarke? You say you know more than them about how people respond to things?
Now that's persuasive. Arguing with Stanley Kubrick, that's tough. All right, well, I can't argue with is that we have to pay some bills. We got to do some commercials, so stay with us. We'll be right back on the...
For centuries, man has looked toward the heavens.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Exploring beyond the limits of our knowledge.
I do believe there's life out there.
From man's adventures in other worlds to the close encounters of our world, Fox News Channel investigates where we're headed and what we will find. Paul Azan hosts We Are the Aliens, a Fox News Channel special event.
President Kennedy was murdered by a conspiracy that was planned in advance at the highest levels of our government, and it was carried out by fanatical and disciplined Cold Warriors in the Pentagon and CIA's covert operation apparatus.
Welcome back to a special edition of Full Nelson. I'm Rob Nelson, and we're celebrating the new millennium, talking about conspiracies. All right, that was Oliver Stone's movie JFK, which you just saw. And I just want to ask people, did it happen? JFK, conspiracy?
I
one
think
guy?
so, yes.
Conspiracy? Or
Yes,
just,
definitely.
Yes, conspiracy. What do you think? Conspiracy?
Sure.
Conspiracy, not Lee Harvey alone.
No,
No.
not the magic bullet.
Yeah, conspiracy.
Conspiracy.
Oh, definitely
Is
conspiracy.
anybody here thinking what wasn't? No one? No one, okay. Right. No one. Who? You think it wasn't? You think you're the only guy? Someone's got to think that.
Yeah, I don't think it was a conspiracy. I think it
Lee
was
Harvey
one
acted
person
on it.
acting on his own.
All right, let me ask you guys, the panelists, why is it now that we universally think that JFK was killed in a conspiracy, and yet the government insists it was one guy standing alone in in the bookstore shooting?
I think we're looking at the legacy of a lot of government lies about the Kennedy years. And a lot of these lies came out of the mouth of Robert Kennedy and a lot of Kennedy administration friends. There were a great many secrets to keep about what happened when John Kennedy was in office. And some of them, such as covert operations against Castro, the efforts
So you
to
think
kill
they're
Castro,
keeping
they
a
were
cover-up
afraid
to
not
hide the other stuff? Not that they need to hide that he was killed by a conspiracy, but...
I think that what's happened in the Oliver Stone view of this history is that John F. Kennedy has been sainted in a strange way as a man who was going to bring an era of peace to this world, when instead he had aggressive covert action policies. He had close friends through the hierarchy of the CIA. He was cranking up counterinsurgency programs around the world. And this was a guy who, if you're going to believe was martyred, you have to come up with some great...
You're all nodding. You all...
Yeah, I mean, all of that's very debatable, but the reason people know that
Well, what's debatable about
the Kennedy assassination is the Zapruder film. Anybody watches the Zapruder film, the evidence of your eyes. He's being shot from the front. I provided you with a copy.
Right.
You can run it now.
Now, John...
Can I jump in for a second?
Jonathan, in your book, you talk about the whole, or maybe it wasn't in your book, John. I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't think it was. Somebody, I read one of you guys said something about the Dan Rather thing, which I'd never heard before.
That was me.
That Dan Rather said the head went...
Yeah, that his head went forward. He said that he had seen this Zapruder film and that he saw it go forward, when in fact it went backwards.
And you said that they basically reversed the order of the images so it looked that way.
Yeah, and the Time Life, who bought the Zapruder film and then kept it secret from the American public for over 10 years, they presented in their magazine the images of his head, of the death, and it showed the head moving forward, which would supposedly indicate that Lee Harvey Oswald did it. Well, it was the exact opposite. So if Lee Harvey Oswald did do it, why were they trying to cover up how it supposedly happened?
And if I could just clarify one thing, the Dan Rather thing was a radio report before the film was ever shown on television. So what Dan Rather is describing with his words is actually Life magazine, not the assassination. So you can see the coordination of a cover-up in the media.
But now, that would take so much work. I mean, I think it was a conspiracy too, but so much work to cover it up.
Well, it happened. I'm sorry, but I mean, that did happen. We can't debate that. So you can say, well, it took so much work, so it didn't happen, but you're ignoring what is the reality. So why don't you explain to me, since you know what happened, what actually did happen?
I'm not saying I know what happened, and I, like most people, think there was a conspiracy, but at the same time, it seems hard to believe that so many people could go to such great lengths to keep this all hidden at such an intricate level.
I actually don't understand, if there were a conspiracy, what the conspiracy is about. What are we covering up here with Kennedy's assassination? And I'm opening that up for discussion. I mean, if there is a conspiracy, what are we trying to hide? The guy was shot. We're trying to hide who actually shot him, or what?
Isn't that basically what we'd be trying to hide? Who actually shot him?
Okay, so if that's the case, let's go with this a little further. Great. So some mysterious person shot him. Okay.
Well, mysterious more than one person.
Right. So now a lot of people, mysterious group of people tried to do this.
But I think what Jonathan's saying is the problem is that there was a group of people, and there was more than one.
How is it that after
somebody coordinated
38 years, no one has talked? Remarkable. You know, for a while they thought when the Soviet Union collapsed.
No one is what?
Let me
for
just
38
finish.
years?
For a while they thought that when the Soviet Union would collapse, that the KGB files would open up. And we'd all learn about the secret assassination conspiracy for JFK. Hey, never happened. sort of like, when does the buck finally stop?
Well, if you assume that it was a
conspiracy, but where's the proof? Show me some proof.
Jonathan, are we going to get more proof for this? Is more proof coming?
Proof. Come on.
Is more proof? I mean, is this something we're going to find in the next few years?
Look,
more declassification?
when you're talking about something that happened almost 40 years ago now, I mean, the idea of proof just, doesn't really hold philosophical water.
What you have it's a leap of faith.
No, it's not a leap of faith. No, it's not a leap of faith. It's not a leap of faith.
It is a leap of faith. You're saying there's no proof.
What you're talking about is an accumulation of a large amount of data that points in a certain direction. And you can choose to believe it or you can choose not to believe it.
That's called a leap of faith at the end of the day. That's what religion's about.
Well, it's all about, if you want to play that game,
can't be proven.
If you want to play that game, it's all a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith that the sun's going to rise in the morning tomorrow.
That's the nature. No, it's not true.
This is the stupidest reductionist argument, and I hear this again and again and again. And it's just ridiculous.
Jonathan, you're going to get the last word on this. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about global spies in our skies and whether they know everything about what you do, where you go, when you do it. When we come back, stay with us.
If you're going to be in New York and would like to join our studio audience, please send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Tickets Full Nelson, 1211 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York 10036, or call 212.
Fiction and fantasy. They say the government doesn't tell us.
Conspiracy.
They say the government tries to hide its secrets. They say the government's involved.
Cover-ups.
Is there any truth in what they say? Join host Rob Nelson for a new Millennium special. They're out to get us.
Federal agents you had following you on that ferry.
I don't...
Who are you working for?
You're talking about, I'm not working.
Is this about me? Am I a target here? Do they know me?
Who is Daddy?
Do they know me?
I don't know what you're talking about!
Welcome back to the Full Nelson, a Millennium Special. Are they out to get us? All right, that was Will Smith and Gene Hackman in Enemy of the State. And, raises a question. I remember seeing that movie and thinking, all right, I buy this. I think somebody can be sitting up there looking down on me, when I'm peeing or something in the bathroom, and it worried me. Is that just complete fantasy?
You should worry. This year, Rob, I'll make a New Year's prediction. In the year 2000, Americans are going to learn a lot about the National Security Agency. This is one of our intelligence agencies. It's in charge of electronic eavesdropping, surveillance of computer messages, faxes, microwave radio, whatever. National Security Agency, also known as No Such Agency, because it is the most classified entity within our government. We don't know its budget. We don't know how many people it employs. And we're not sure of the state of the laws that govern what the NSA can do. There's some Congress people who are concerned about this. There'll be hearings soon. It's something to watch for.
But is it realistic? I mean, Enemy of the State, is that at all realistic?
I will actually agree that in some elements that is truly realistic.
You're on board with this one?
With this one, I'm slightly on board, because as someone who writes that technology...
You could be on top of a little building and they could be watching.
Well, right now, the best satellites give you a resolution of about this. So anything this size or bigger can be seen from a spy satellite. So already, that's pretty darn good. And we know for sure that all of the fiber optic communications going in and out of this country are probably recorded in some way and stored. They're not necessarily listened to in real time because there's not enough people to do it, but it's there and they can go back and retrieve.
Meaning if they wanted to find any one of us, they could find us,
right. Well, the NSA does.
Turn us off.
The theory is that the NSA, in fact, does record long-distance
And why would the government care? Why would they?
Because during the Cold War, that was the main source of intelligence gathering, was listening on communications. That's how we knew what the Soviet Union was doing.
No Soviet Union, let's go after American people themselves.
Why not? This whole infrastructure, it's got to be fed.
The whole problem, actually, with that movie, Enemy of the State, is that it doesn't name that system. The system is called Echelon. And there are groups out there that are urging the Congress to look into it. They want public hearings to talk about it. This whole idea of the surveillance state, it's been around for a long time. Why do you not think the government would want to listen in on people and try to control them? What about that is odd to you?
It's not that it's odd to me. I'm curious. I really wonder. It seems like a lot of work to
Well, here's
monitor.
The good news. You feel a lot better about this, that the encryption technologies, which is the scrambling of data, voice, and so on, are now surpassing the abilities of intelligence agencies to decode them.
Okay. All right. Pick it up on the other side. We're going to go to a commercial. Stay with us.
Switch my chart with that guy's chart. Otherwise, I'll be dead by morning, I swear.
Jerry, you relax. Go to sleep. I will see you tomorrow.
You want to bet?
You're being paranoid.
I'm only paranoid because they want me dead. Please, Alice. Save my life.
Welcome back to a special Millennium edition of the Full Nelson. And for those who don't know, that was Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory, which was about a guy being obsessed with the government cover-up. Which kind of leads me, before the break, Ken, you said, why would I doubt the government was, interested in spying on me? And I thought about it. You know, I think I kind of want to give the government the benefit of the doubt. A part of me sort of thinks, like, why would they spend the time and the money to monitor all their citizens? But then I thought about it, and, you know, I think it's valid. Maybe I should be more concerned, and that was my question. Should I be? Should we all be a lot more concerned? Are we being duped into kind of a complacent attitude?
There's probably too much secrecy in this country. It's very hard to get information, and unfortunately that breeds then a lot of paranoia, and we don't really know. We feel like we don't really know what's going on. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And we do know who's been surveilled in the past. Some of our finest Americans, like Martin Luther King, were subjected to outrageous surveillance and harassment by the federal government. With a history like that, it's no wonder we're so worried about what modern surveillance technologies might be. All that was done against him, of course, predated satellites and what have you.
Yeah. And this character that Mel Gibson created in this movie, when I was watching that movie, it seemed to me that this must be what it's like for a black person to watch Step and Fetch It, because he's crazy and he's brainwashed and all that stuff. We're just normal people discussing serious concerns about the world around us. We're not crazy. And to see that kind of cartoon and see the media go back to that time and again, same thing with X-Files, and turn it all into this silly talk about extraterrestrials and that is anathema to me.
Well, do you think you're obsessed with conspiracy?
I don't know. Are you?
You came in with a stack of papers.
It's a study. It's a form of study. It's called parapsychology.
Why are we, Jonathan, why are we so skeptical of people who want to, like, look into this, who are always doubting? You know, the joke, you're paranoid. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Well, this is what I was going to say. This, I mean, actually, the questions you're asking Ken there sort of go back to the point I was making at the top of the show, which is, you know, why exactly do we, why are some people, just because you happen to not even believe a certain thing, but ask questions about something, why are you treated as if you're obsessed, or you're nuts, or you're crazy, or a kook? You know, I don't think there's one definitive answer, but I mean, the sort of simplistic answer is that you know, you're a threat. Dissent is always threatening to whatever, you know, the orthodoxy of whoever happens to be in power at that time wants you to believe.
Should we be more skeptical as a public? Are we too complacent?
Of course. I mean, we're talking earlier about leaps of faith. I mean, I think the real issue when you're talking about conspiracy theories or any of this stuff is, how do we know what we know? And the conclusion that I think the only conclusion you can come to is that we all come to our lives and to you know, to participating in the society with certain belief systems. What are the roots of those belief systems? Those are the things we have to question. Where are we getting our information? What is the quality of that information? Is there any agenda behind the information?
Now look at the era we're in, the kind of the internet era. It seems like information's being consolidated to where more and more and more we all think the same thing. I mean, on the one hand, I know the internet opens a portal for people who want to look, but for people who don't want to look, it just seems like information is even more kind of commodified.
I actually think there's two layers that are happening here. There's a mass media layer that is becoming very concentrated, and then underneath you've got this internet layer which is actually very open. And if you forget the U.S. for a second, but around the rest of the world, go to other countries that have had no freedom of thought for a long time, the internet's unbelievable for them, because it truly is creating new frames.
Is it crazy to think that the government could use the internet as a way to basically control all information, everything about you?
It's highly unlikely at this point that they could do that.
That is crazy, actually.
That's crazy?
Well, I mean, I think that's crazy because I think the internet actually has the exact opposite effect. I mean, if anything, the internet is going to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the government to control information. I mean, you can try, and I'm sure that, you know, corporations and the internet has already become very commercialized, and the same, you know, corporate interests control that control, you know, television, whatever. But the basic structure of the internet is essentially free, and it always will be.
And that's not going to change.
I mean,
that's never going to change.
As long as you have the right to put a website up, as long as you have the right to send email, it's hard to see how that would change.
And that's why they have systems like Echelon, and they have these backdoor systems where they can actually spy on people when they're up on the web and see what they're looking at. And there's a lot of loose information there, and they're making an effort to try to control it.
I guess the reason I asked it is, you know, that feeling that I log on, you know, and where everything I do is recorded somewhere. Well, everywhere I go, every site I go to, everything I look at, everyone I talk to.
Yes, elements are recorded, but you got to remember the needle in the haystack theory. There's so much noise, so much information that the odds of whatever you're doing standing out become smaller and smaller just because there's too much stuff going on around you.
Well, you know, the internet, though, is a great surveillance method. I mean, the facts are that, you know, before, in order to find out what, you know, certain subversive groups or people labeled as crackpots would, what they thought and what they were talking about, you had to actually go out there and infiltrate the groups.
Stick something hard
Yeah,
in
whereas
their
now they can just log on to my website and they know exactly what these people are thinking.
And they might be doing that after this show. All right, when we come back, we're going to get into some final thoughts and answer the question, if we can, of how you can tell when a conspiracy's now been proven. Stay with us.
You know why the Grateful Dead are always on tour? Yeah? You know why? Because they're all British agents, intelligence agents. They're spies. Jerry Garcia himself has a 00 rating, just like James Bond.
Jerry Garcia's dead.
That's what they want you to think.
Welcome back to the Full Nelson. We're talking about whether they are out to get us. All right, you know, conspiracies are hard to prove, but I think everybody pretty much thinks the JFK thing was a conspiracy. I know you don't agree with that, but as a public, we largely do. Martin Luther King seems to be the newest one, in which now there's a kind of a consensus that Martin Luther King was killed by a conspiracy. And there was a trial finding in a civil case in Tennessee where a jury said, basically, there was a conspiracy. Now, I don't know if that makes it a fact, but it certainly suggests it's no longer wacko to think that.
It was actually a strategy. There was a judgment against this person for $100, and any jury of 12 people would think $100, that's not much. The King family did that deliberately in order to get this legal decision to urge a new investigation. And that's what's really going on.
And will it?
That's not so.
Will it trigger a new investigation?
That's the plan. We'll see.
But I mean, what, and Jonathan, again, you're in LA, but just jump in if you want on this. What makes a conspiracy, you know, what sort of proves it to us? When does it become fact? I mean, you don't, you know, I think JFK happened. Most people do. I know you do, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, that's certainly one case where I think that all the evidence indicates that.
I mean, David disagrees, but I mean, despite that, for the most part, as a public, we think it happened. Why?
Right.
What happens that it becomes accepted fact? It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's a fact.
I think it becomes accepted fact. Well, you know, it becomes largely accepted when you have that, what I was talking about before, a massive accumulation of data that seems to point in one direction. But I think the question of, well, is this proven or not proven, is not a valid question to ask about conspiracy theories or almost anything. I mean, even in a court of law, you're not asked to prove something. You're asked to demonstrate that it could be true beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal. Because we recognize, even in our legal system, we recognize that absolute knowledge is impossible.
So you would say Kennedy was proven beyond a reasonable doubt, Martin Luther King?
Would I say that the conspiracy was proven beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say at this point it's proven beyond beyond most doubt. I mean, I don't know if what's out there now would stand up in a court of law, because I don't know who would be on trial. Well, the Martin Luther King thing, I think, you know, in a way, I'm a little worried about this recent trial, because the trial itself was it was a one-sided affair. And in a way, I'm a little concerned that this is going to be used by people who don't think there was a conspiracy there to say, look, this was a sham, and it's almost being used to discredit the conspiracy.
Let me ask you guys, what's going to be the next big conspiracy that's going to kind of break and become, wow, we believe it now, they were hiding it?
My favorite speculation is that the Y2K computer bug, when we wake up, as we have today on January 1st, seeing that nothing actually happened, that the Y2K computer bug was just a giant conspiracy on the part of computer programmers to make more money fixing it.
Intentional?
Yes.
An intentional thing?
I'm making it up, but I mean, I'm just saying, that's like...
No, I mean, but you really believe it?
No, I don't. I don't at all.
Okay.
I'm saying, you know, you asked me...
I didn't think you did, but I thought maybe you had one real conspiracy you thought.
Rob, I think most of our conspiracy theories have revolved around government in the past, and I think lately people have become more attuned to what sorts of power are held within corporations, within private hands. I think you'll see more conspiracy theory about that issue and more hard fact about that issue, how corporate power works. Yeah. The recent battle in Seattle over WTO is a great example of how people are getting turned on to that issue.
I've done 2 books about this, the idea of the transnational cabal, the transnational power thing. It's the octopus, is what a writer named Danny Casolaro called it, who died under mysterious circumstances. My co-author of that book died under mysterious circumstances a month ago, and I think you're going to see that
like
more and more.
World, transnational world power thing. All right, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you guys for being here. Jonathan in LA, thank you, everybody in the audience, and you at home for watching. If I'm not here next week, they are out to get us. Happy New Year.